Try to focus on the positive things. Are you going to dinner on Saturday?
Yeah.
Should be nice.
Yeah.
We started 13 wins and 36-19 as the Yankees. The defense behind Cole, Steve. In the infield, Donaldson, kind of left the Torres, Rizzo, veteran Hall. The infield, Jose Nino, where Nino left his year for the Yankees this year behind the plate.
Nicole, I don't know if I got this in.
Yeah, I saw it online.
I think it's a way to try to bring me back.
He's a really good priest.
This one,
Who's the senior liaison? The senior liaison?
Donna. I think I have others now.
It's just this Cabrini's doing that thing. Sending me free invitations. And I was trying every time I'm looking at it.
Oh yeah, when's that? Somebody and Mercy sent me an invitation to something.
Donna, are you going to the Cabrini seniors thing? They're
for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone, to the regular Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. You'll see that Trustee Rosenberg is appearing virtually, which is permitted under the law. The first item on the agenda is the public hearing to consider a local law which proposes to really restructure the planning and architectural historic review boards into one entity, the planning board. So, Valerie, maybe you can. I was looking all over for you. I'm like, where's Valerie?
Where's Valerie? Missed it by that.
So I'll just do a real brief summary of the proposed local law. I mean, this is to consolidate the historic architecture review, or the architectural and historic review boards in the architectural and historic review procedures will now fall under the planning board's purview. The plan is that anything that requires site plan approval along with AHRB will automatically be heard at the planning board level. And the projects that only require AHRB will also be heard at the planning board, but specifically under architectural review approval. The historic preservation requirements.
Yeah, to be honest, but we're awarding.
Steven, we can hear you.
Thank you. All the historic requirements that are technically in the code right now will transfer over to the planning board. The planning board will have the ability to pull in any professionals that are necessary in terms of historic review and historic preservation. And then there's also procedures that are able to be set forth by the planning board in terms of also streamlining the process in terms of with the building department on very specific AHRB applications that do not require a significant amount of review.
Now, is there an option, and
You want to take a motion to open the hearing?
I thought,
Did you?
I did not. I knew I had to do something like that.
I got you.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Cassell, all in favor. Public hearing is open. Valerie, can you start from the beginning, please?
Oh my God.
I'm just joking. So, and I know you've done this in other communities, and I know we've had a lot of input from the planning board and from
Yes.
the AHRB.
And the planning, and the, also the building department, Lori Lee provided assistance, and we also had a subcommittee that also included some local architects like Stephen Tilley to also weigh in on the process as well.
And with this, effectively, we would no longer have a separate AHRB, right?
That's correct.
And do you think or recommend, or was it an issue, should we expand the planning board to have more members?
Right, so that was something that was contemplated at the beginning of the process, that if for some reason certain, if the village wanted to expand the planning board, that you could. The planning board recommended that you keep the planning board as is, which is 5 members at this point in time. And if for some reason the workload increases to the extent that they need the additional assistance, then at that point, they recommended that the board consider expanding the planning board.
Does the planning board have alternates?
Yes,
Yes.
How many?
there's one
or two?
alternate right now. They can have 2, but there is one right now.
There's one now.
And does the members of the planning board meet the same criteria that we used to have in the code for the AHRB?
Yeah, so right now, there are a few architects on the planning board. So yes, we believe that they do meet the criteria.
And the new law includes that same, like a similar criteria, so we're not gonna have like we'll have a diverse planning board as far as experience?
That's correct.
So yeah, we have one registered architect on the planning board. That was always their requirement, and then it was, I mean, the one that's a little trickier is the historic preservation, partly because the wording is vague. But when we met with planning board and AHRB I think we had a workshop, a couple about this. We felt that there was enough collective experience in both of those disciplines to meet this requirement.
Okay,
And again, it doesn't eliminate the function of the HRB, and you'll see that, right, it still has the criteria. It just means that the meetings will be happening concurrently with those of the planning board. So the HRB functions the same way, and that the qualifications, there should be residents, 2 members shall have particular expertise. You know, those things are still in your code, they're not being changed.
okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, there's just one other comment. I think under law that we can have 7 members of the planning board, so it wouldn't necessarily require a code change should it be decided that they need the 2 additional members, correct?
Right now, I think you have only 5 members.
Right now,
Yeah, but I thought it could go up to 7.
under New York State Village law, it can go up to 7, but
Okay.
your local code says 5.
Ah, okay, okay.
And keeping in mind that alternates can only act in the absence of a
Right.
regular member. They're not a voting member
Right.
without, necessity.
I have a question for you. There's language peppered throughout the code on AHRB. I see a couple of pages were all the other areas addressed where it's referenced?
Yeah.
So,
We're not changing, it still says there shall be an HRB.
oh, so that's how you got around
So
the,
that's how we handled it. It's the
Mitigating.
easiest way. And there was only one cross-section, which I sent you out in advance. There was one cross-section that went to specifically,
where is that? That's in a separate email? Or-
yeah.
It referred to a specific
It
section.
referred to a specific section having to do with waivers and exemptions, which you no longer have because those are now built into the code elsewhere.
Okay.
So that's going to be changed, just to address that one cross-section and make it generally much more generic. Sending you to that design section directly.
And what about the provision where it says that their meetings aren't held as public hearings? I mean, the planning board had public hearings, and so did the AHRB. I mean, are projects still going to be subject to public hearings with public comment, or no?
So technically, the AHRB does not have public hearings, but they would notify the neighbors in case they did want to come And
Right, but then the ability to speak is at the discretion of the new board. I mean, that seems contrary to what we've been doing in the past. I mean, is there a
Not,
way
not
to?
really. It's always been, the AHRB, because it's not a public hearing, there's no.
Talking about the planning board, because this gets rid of the planning board, right? Like they're combining into one, so now,
Oh, so.
The meetings run concurrently,
Yeah.
and those
Confused.
applications requiring a public hearing at the planning board will still
Require
have
a
that.
public hearing, yes. So
Oh.
all site plan approvals will still require a public hearing, special permits will still require a public hearing.
so what you're saying is that we're gonna still have a planning board and AHRB, but they consist of the identical members.
Exactly, exactly.
So when
And-
you're talking about the shingle size or whatever, that isn't necessarily a public hearing. If
That's
that was an
correct.
AHRB.
But anything that requires a site plan approval will require a public hearing, and people do even now opine on the architecture of the buildings at public hearings.
It will still be included in the criteria that they review, and we have the chair available to give you more information on that if you require. But what it means is those other applications that were just in the purview of the HRB will be conducted not in a public hearing, and those are usually separate, separate specific referrals from the building inspector. You've exempted a number of actions, and you've assigned the roles directly to your building inspector, but your building inspector will have the ability to request a referral to the HRB, and the HRB will then act as an HRB without a public hearing.
And when will they be meeting? Is it like the same once a month as the planning
Yes.
board, or is there's only gonna be one meeting of the AHRB?
And the chair can call a special meeting of the HRB, or a second meeting can be conducted.
Right. And if at some point in time, the planning board decides to have like a subcommittee of the AHRB, if like, let's just say, for example, there's numerous applications coming forward with the AHRB, you can create a subcommittee in which a smaller, smaller contingent of the planning board meet to review the applications and then send a recommendation to speed up the process in front of the planning board. But when we actually we did comparisons of, the building department provided us information as to how many applications were before the HRB. When you actually compared them to what was in front of the planning board, we only anticipate probably on average like 1 or 2 applications in addition to what's before the planning board currently.
Would this have the benefit of, for neighbors, for example, who are tracking a project, they then would only need to go to one meeting
That's correct.
to see what was going on, instead of having to track 2 different boards? That's a benefit as well.
And this was the goal from the beginning, to streamline the process for the benefit of the public and the benefit of the applicant themselves. Because routinely, you get your site plan approval, then you go and make your building permit application, and then you could be sent back to the HRB, which could then change items already discussed by the planning board. So it created a bounce back and forth, and Trustee Patino can speak to this also. And in many cases, it added a couple of months to the approval process for the building permit, once they were finished with their site plan.
Well, and I can
Yes,
tell
I
you-
should have introduced this a little bit, but I figured you're all sick of me belaboring this for months and, numerous meetings. But
Oh, no.
it does, okay.
This was
Thank
your
you, Larry.
goal. This was your number one goal.
And so that's an important point. There are additional points. There's a tremendous amount of overlap between the two. There always have been. And as many people on this board are aware, been intimate with this, there have been conflicts over the years, and those have led to problems. And there's really no line in the sand to draw between, planning and architecture. And so I think myself as a previous chair, current chair, other previous chairs who I've spoken to, current chair of the planning board, all agree with that, sort of unequivocally. And it's in the benefit of applicants, benefit of the volunteers of the village who dedicate a lot of time and then have potentially undermined by another board. And so in addition, I hadn't even thought about the benefit to neighbors who can go to one meeting and see where everything's happening. So yet another reason why I think this is important and beneficial to the village.
But there's still nobody on the board that has historic preservation experience, right? Like, I know we have trouble with that, but it is a code requirement, so like, should we be taking further steps to try to find that person?
It's a good question. The way that it was dealt with for several years were the projects that, where there was significant historic, components of the project. We hired a historic preservation consultant.
Yeah.
And I think, given the size of our village and the limitations as to who can be on the board based on who practices in the village, it just makes it, there aren't a lot of historic preservationists around. And even if we do have a couple in the village, they're practicing in the village, it's just really hard to get those people on the board.
No, I get it. I mean, we should take steps to see if we can put something in the village, the mayor's newsletter or advertisements or something, and then if we can't find someone, we should probably change the code because we have a requirement that we're not complying with year in and year out.
I agree that, the pathways to changing the code have been consistently shot down by Lori Lee. Yes.
No, about
I'm saying it
having,
right now by removing it from this draft. Got
Well,
the draft in front of you for this.
I'm talking about,
who can serve
on the
on
board.
the AHRB.
Oh, that was state law.
That's state.
So I think, it does require a degree of certification in historic preservation, but it also has another option of demonstrate experience and expertise in historic preservation through a history of employment in the field or in projects involving historic preservation in a related field such as architecture, planning, or construction. So, I think there are a few.
You should interview the board to find out who qualifies for that and then satisfy the requirement.
I mean, we can do that. I mean, I
And
know
maybe
that you
people
have
on there who do
like
that.
Rob Lane and some others that, might have
Yeah.
additional experience.
Or maybe somebody's willing to do the certification and we could pay for it. I mean,
I think that's a graduate degree or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't think it's like a
it's a
court.
certificate.
Well, no certification, I mean. if
Yeah, it's
they're-
not like a.
No, I'm a lawyer, not an architect. So.
No, I'm saying, but that, I think in
Yeah.
practice, it means a degree from, accredited university.
Okay, well, anyway, we should
Different-
figure that out then. If it's a state requirement and we can't change it, then let's work on getting someone the experience or something we can do to qualify.
Right, I mean, that's something that we can have as a target
Or changing the law, the code, can we change the code so that that one member can live outside of Dobbs Ferry?
Might be hard to find a volunteer outside of Dobbs Ferry who wants.
Fair point, but yes.
I mean, the alternative, we just remove that and we,
Or we said state law, we can't. It's a state requirement, that's why it can't get removed.
no, I mean, remove the requirement for someone to be a certified, for someone to have a degree in historic preservation from the code as a requirement of the AHRB, since we're redoing this, well, anyway, this would be a time to do that. We could,
I thought Lori, did I misunderstand that you said that's
Yeah.
a state requirement?
No, what
Not
I
that
was
part.
referring to was,
Something
that
else.
trustee Patino was imputing the state law to me, but I'm parroting the state law that says if you're a licensed practicing architect, you cannot also be a member of the planning board. It's
In the village.
correct.
Oh,
So
okay.
It could be outside the village, but
It's
if
a New
you're
York
in the
state
village.
law that it is a conflict, and you cannot recuse or remove or
I know, yeah.
Chinese wall yourself out of it. It's just an outright ethical violation.
I mean, I have no problem taking it
No, we
out.
could eliminate the requirement.
Yeah, but there needs to be a requirement that when historical projects or buildings come up, that they're
Yeah.
required to hire a consultant then.
I think we could swap that language.
Yeah, we should.
That's the way
Why
to.
not?
Valerie, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, we can, and I will just highlight that this language is taken from New York State model law for certified local governments. It's commonplace to have that requirement when you're dealing with historic
Yeah.
districts. That being said, because of the issues that you raised, we can work with an amendment to the proposed local law that would require, an expert professional to be brought in as part of any.
Just put an
But
or.
I think-
in
Can I-
there.
can I
put
just-
an or in.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think the first step would be to talk to the members of the planning board and see
Yeah,
who meets that alternative, because it's likely someone there
Someone-
does, especially if they're working in the city or something like, there's tons of historic buildings everywhere.
Yeah, and this is part B of that,
Yeah.
is so vague that we sort of covered it,
Yeah.
by, those of us who had some like occasional practice in historic buildings. So, demonstrate expertise in historic preservation through a history of employment in the field or projects involving historic preservation. It doesn't say that I would need to have, a majority of my projects be historic preservation in order for me to qualify. So, that myself and other people on the board qualified, so to speak, based
But
on.
if we're going to change the law anyway now, why not just put in, or if in the judgment of the chair, as required, hire historical experts?
It
That's
does allow.
elsewhere. It
does allow for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
already-
It's gonna make it
then
more
we're good.
complicated, so I think it's fine, let's leave it the way it is for now.
You have covered it, yeah.
I mean, I think the concern is, and the reason why this language is usually in, especially when you're dealing with historic districts, is that it prevents a situation where nobody without any expertise
Right.
is making, judgments on how to deal with historic preservation and historic rehabilitation.
And I don't think anybody on the planning board, AHRB, would want to make a decision of that significance without having a consultant with a specific expertise. And the law allows for the hiring of that level of.
Okay. You want to say anything from the planning board's perspective? No? You want to say anything from the architectural review board perspective? Come on up.
Hi all, it's Yair Rosenkrantz, 120 Building, former member of the HRE. And I'm glad and happy to see that this streamlining of the boards, the process of review process is progressing. Thank you to all involved. One thing that they didn't mention is that in the last 2 years that I was a member, 3 years, we barely made quorum. There was a shortage of recruiting people to be part of the board. Every couple of months, we had to suspend the reviews and the meetings, making it cumbersome to the applicants and the neighbors, and everything was more complicated. So this streamlining idea is a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Good evening, Steve Hunter, Chair of the Planning Board. I just wanted to say that the board is looking forward to being more fully involved in the architectural side of things. Anybody that's been to our meetings over time knows that we wander off in that direction often anyway. We have people now on the board who have background in that. And so I think the board is ready and qualified to take this on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Patty?
So, Patty Steinschneider, local business in Dobbs Ferry that gets involved in many of these things, having appeared before the Architectural Review Board and Planning Board a lot of times.
You're probably the Cal Ripken of.
Yeah, maybe. When I first came to Dobbs, there wasn't an Architectural Review Board. They had been disbanded because of what I think was called by the judge shenanigans when it came to the development that's now Washington headquarters. They had been disbanded for 5 years. I was here when Mr. Lowenfish and Steve Tilley were permitted to reestablish it. And they did a really good job bringing back an architectural review board that was doing an important work in the village. They did that for a long time. Steve, I think, was on the board for 12 years. I think he made a tremendous contribution to the village. It's gotten more complicated with time. And as Steve said, the feeling on the planning board has definitely gravitated towards wanting to have more of a say when it comes to what the buildings actually will be. The previous chair, who was there for longer than I did, he was 50 years on the board. He, as a professional engineer, he wanted to have a clear delineation between the architect side of it and what he perceived as site engineering and that side. So when somebody like Rob Lane would start wanting to talk about the massing of the roof lines, Ed would often kind of cut it off and say, that's not our forte, that's what the Architecture Review Board does. Too often, it was that further step into what the buildings would be like that was necessary, I think, for the quality of the project. The problem was at many times, we have a couple of famous ones where it actually resulted in lawsuits, where the Planning Board and the Architecture Review Board and the Board of Trustees came out with different decisions. This step, I think, helps dramatically in resolving that. And anytime you can get clarity of process, I think it automatically contributes to the quality of the work that you're going to see done. So I think this is a really important step. When it comes to the issue of historic expertise, even if there was somebody on the board who had really good credentials for being a historic architectural historian, I think the board still benefits most by having an outside report that is done. I know when we did 100 Main, I thought that's what actually helped a lot, because the village brought in somebody who was very highly qualified. They did a very thorough report. Unfortunately, they didn't say their real opinion to the last sentence, which is subsequently, this is not a historic structure. It was a helpful tool, I believe, for Mike and others in trying to figure out what decisions they should make about it. So I think that should just be an understanding that when the issue of something like that comes up, that, the village, if the board feels it's necessary, they should just be very comfortable bringing somebody in. My understanding is I paid for that, right? The consultant for the village. So if it's not going to cost the village anything to have that consultant come in, I think it's a good step, and it often removes from the board members the tension of listening to people perhaps who are against the project, saying things that might not be 100% the fact, and really coming out with something that's a good solution that resolves what the needs of the project are. The one thing that concerns me a bit is the way that when I read through the law, it's like this parallel process. And what I want to make sure is there's not two votes. There's not going to be an architectural review board component of the planning board vote, and then a separate vote by the planning board. I could see where if there's a group that's identified as the architectural core of the planning board, they could come up with findings that there's no double.
No, just those applications that are specific to the AHRB only, and those are listed, will be an AHRB vote. And again, those are not subject to public hearing. But if the AHRB and the planning board are meeting simultaneously in the guise of a public hearing, then it's one vote.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, which is, and I think where this really matters are projects where site plan approval is a component of the approvals process. And so in those instances, they're one view and one vote on the project. So for the deck, the fence, window change, small things like that, those are votes as an AHRB. So I think.
Well, then in the words of Emily Littella, I think that was it. Never mind.
Thank you. There's one thing I just want to point out, that there is that every once in a while, in my experience, there have been, especially larger projects sometimes, that an applicant is asking for the site plan to be finalized, and that they would come back with, let's say, some minor material changes to get the AHRB approval. So there is that ability to technically separate them on those really rare circumstances where it's usually a request from the applicant, but it's usually done all at once in one vote and one resolution.
And that's why they're entitled to promulgate and adopt rules and procedures. We've specifically given them the right to do that as an HRB, so that would be incorporated in a rule and procedure. They'd have the ability to take action on the site plan to move the project for the benefit of the public and the applicant, and then at the request, return for this.
Right after, if this law gets voted upon, the building department and I were just talking today about how we're going to have to meet shortly thereafter and start revising the application process, and then also dealing with some of the rules and procedures to bring forth to the planning board to vote on that. So that would be the very next step in the process.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the public who wants to speak? Anybody online? Okay, anybody else from any other trustee?
There's somebody online.
Hello?
Hi, Laura. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you identify yourself, please?
Hi, Laura. Help. Board 191 Broad.
I can't hear you. Can you say it again?
Laura House. I live at 191 Broadway, and I'm on the planning board.
Sure.
And I want to thank you for considering joining the board.
You're breaking up, so it's really hard to understand what you're saying.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just want to say that I think it's a positive move, and I do have a Bachelor of Architecture, and I also have construction experience, and I feel that you're concerned with the historical part of this code, or that as an architect, I think that's something that we would consider when we are looking at design and a project that is proposed in front of us. So all around, I think our board has a positive outlook on the experience of joining these two boards. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you volunteering as well.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else?
Okay. Hello,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, let me put the picture on, sorry. Yeah, my name is Scarlett Du. Scarlett spells as Scarlett, last name Du. I live on 50 King Street in Dobbs Ferry. I'm not sure whether this is the courtesy of the floor, because
This is not courtesy of the floor yet. We're still.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so you will have it later, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait then. Sorry about that.
Sure. Anybody else who wants to speak about the conciliation of the,
Consolidation.
I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. The consolidation of the planning board and the AHRB. Anybody? Okay.
I've been liaison to the planning board for a number of years now, and I was also part of the subcommittee. And we've all seen the issues and problems with going through all the various boards and the time that it takes and the confusion that it creates, et cetera, et cetera. And I think they've done a really great job on combining it and trying to look at all the issues that would be involved in it and mitigate them. And, you know, I think this is something we should definitely do.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on with this. So is there a motion to close the public hearing? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? Public hearing is now closed.
And we're going to be adding the section 5, which corrects the single cross-reference, and I sent that by separate email to you. So if you were to proceed to a vote tonight, you would say as amended on the record, and I've already sent it over to Liz, so she has it as well. This is a zoning tax amendment, so it's going to require a couple of extra efforts in order to get it published, prepared, and sent. It will become effective when it's filed with the Secretary of State.
Okay, and we should point out that we have gotten the approval of the Westchester County and a letter dated October 7th, 2022 from the Commissioner Norma Drummond. So I'm sure you're going to clarify this and correct me, Laura Lee, but is there a motion to adopt a local law to reorganize the roles and functions of the planning and historic review boards as amended on the record? Is there a motion? Trustee Patino, second Trustee Rosen Asher. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for everything you've done. Okay, thank you, Valerie, especially Patty, yeah, Steve, Mike. Okay, I think we've now time for a presentation from the Sustainable Westchester. Are they online?
They are.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, board, for having me. I will not take up too much of your time here, just coming as a representative from Sustainable Westchester to talk about the Westchester Power Program and give an update on that program and the new contract coming up for this November, for which Dobbs Ferry participates. So, brief overview: Sustainable Westchester, shared service nonprofit whose members of the municipalities, including Dobbs Ferry, run a suite of different initiatives and programs to benefit the communities and build sustainable and healthy communities in the future. You're well familiar, but we're here to talk about Westchester Power specifically. So 29 of the municipalities are part of this specific program, and we represent about 140,000 residential and small business accounts through the program. Basically here, just trying to build a healthy and clean communities of the future, as I mentioned, mitigating climate change, enabling access to affordable, clean, renewable power through this program, Westchester Power, ultimately to improve air quality and other environmental conditions that are going to, ensure those better health outcomes for the future. And then, hopefully, as we're going along the way here, we're increasing our ability to boost the economy and create green jobs through local opportunities. Anyone who's not familiar, Westchester Power is an electricity supply program. So you as a consumer have the choice about where your electricity comes from. It doesn't have to be Con Edison. You can contract with a private company and make different decisions based on your values or trying to find the best deal. So Westchester Power makes hydropower easily accessible for folks who want to participate in the clean energy transition, but maybe have prohibitive factors for their home to get solar or do something else more directly. And then Con Edison is still the utility of your record. They manage most of the delivery and bill you as a customer, where again, you have choice about your energy supply option. Features of the program: it is an opt-out format. It's designed this way by the state. And it helps us leverage the full buying power of our communities when we go out and solicit for these contracts. We have a competitive open process where different energy service companies want to be our supplier and bid each other down, so we're getting very competitive rates. And functions the same way as anyone's electricity supply always has, where before you just had Con Edison as your default. Now we exist here as a community selected embedded default. It's consumer friendly, no contracts for the individual level, fees or penalties for coming or going. And you can change supply and do any of those elections anytime you like along the way. Purely a public benefit if you want to use it. We have two supply options: the 100% renewable, as I mentioned before, which is the primary reason most municipalities like Dobbs Ferry join, in order to make that accessible for folks. And then we also have a standard supply, which is our more cost-effective mixed fuel source supply option, both of which are fixed prices. And then savings aren't guaranteed through the program. Important note, as always, since we can't predict what the utility will charge on a rolling basis, but again, our rates are fixed, so you have assurance and insulation from price spikes with us. So everyone here probably remembers that we went on pause briefly here at the end of our last contract in June, and in July, folks who were in the program were dropped back to the Con Edison basic supply in this interim period. We're now in the position where we're starting the program back up, and folks have been getting letters this month and last month, and making elections on their enrollment choices. And then again, starting November 1st on people's first meter read dates in that month, they'll be back in the program. The new contract, the supplier is going to be Constellation New Energy again. The rates for renewable and standard, the fixed rates are here as you see them: 15.128 cents for renewable per kilowatt hour, of course, and then standard supply is 13.364. So again, these are, some people have had sticker shock about these new rates because they are twice as high as last contracts, and that's just a reflection of inflation and some volatility in the energy market, which I'll touch on briefly here. But for context, you're not going to find a better price today anyway for renewable energy on the private market. Most of the offers start at 17 cents maybe. And then the average rate for Con Ed supply last month was 12.8, and that's been slowly ticking up over the course of the last few months. And they're expected to be in our range, if not higher, come the winter. And this is a 2-year contract that starts in November, like I said, and runs through October of 2024. So energy market has been bonkers, as I just mentioned. We look at natural gas because it's the predominant fuel for electricity supply. And you can see just from this graphic here on the left that in the last year and a half, the price per unit has jumped, threefold from $3 a year and a half ago to over $9 last month, and has still been settled pretty high. So you'll see a lot of this on an easy Google or in the news anywhere about just what's going to happen this winter with energy prices. And Con Edison has given people a lot of preempting about that as well. They put out a press release and have been in the media talking about big price surges for them for bills this coming winter. So roughly 27%, I think, for Westchester County residents for their electricity supply over last winter. In terms of our program, this is the general Milestone Snapshot. The opt-out period for the initial 30 days is October 17th. So about a week from now for folks if they don't want to be in the program at the new contract initially to opt out. But again, you can opt out anytime and opt back in anytime without penalties of fees. And then, in November, folks will start enrolling into the program where they'd see us on their bills for the first time in December. So this is what the notification letter looks like with the Dobbs Ferry seal for you all, obviously. This is the contents. You'll just have a big descriptor with a lot of the background I just gave and some of the price breakdown and other resources to find more information and direction to visit our website and how to reach out to us. So that's the long and short of it. I can talk about different ways to opt out or change supply. You can email us, go to our website here, or call us. That slide was missing from this, but happy to answer those questions and provide the information as well on how to do all that. But I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so just so we're clear, people are in unless they opt out, right?
Anyone who opted out in the past in prior contracts is not opted back in. So they don't need to call us again if they opted out last contract or 2 contracts ago. That choice remains perpetual unless they change their mind and want to opt back in on their own proactively. And with some exceptions, not everyone does qualify. If they're in private contracts with ESCOs already, then obviously that's a binding thing. They wouldn't come out of. Folks who are on the utility assistance program, get assistance for their bills, don't qualify. There is a subset of other folks who don't generally qualify, but that's the basic grouping there.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everything that
all right.
Do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to courtesy of the floor. Who wants to speak first? Hey, come on up. I know you guys, come on up. I know that you got some people here concerned about Washington Avenue. We haven't voted on Washington Avenue yet. The status is for it to be, we're looking for a survey right now. So the survey will come back. But go ahead, come on up, Roxana.
I saw the surveyors. Yes. So what I think would be best.
Tell us who you are.
Sorry. Roxana Klein Rosenkrantz, and I live at 120 Belden Avenue, the corner of Washington.
Okay.
I think what would be best is if I read the letter that was sent to you all and on behalf of all of our neighbors. In November of 2021, we wrote to you and subsequently appeared in front of the Board of Trustees to request a stop to the proposed sidewalk project on Washington Avenue between Belden and Maple Street. The project was discussed and it was decided that there would be a landscape architect brought in to further study possible solutions that would be better suited for the character of this neighborhood. To the best of our knowledge, that did not happen. It was also discussed that simply installing an ADA compliant cement sidewalk would require the removal of 6 trees, which is unacceptable. Additionally, it was clear that there was a grant approved for the project, resulting in an urgency to move forward with it, which is neither a valid or an acceptable reason to move forward with such a project, we feel. There was a walkthrough with a tree committee and an arborist who deemed 5 out of the 6 trees in perfectly healthy condition. The committee clearly expressed their dissatisfaction with the intention to remove the trees. While we understand the original reasoning for the proposal of this sidewalk, which is mainly safety, we all strongly feel there are other solutions that could be put in place, like the addition of a stop sign at the corner of Washington and Belden Avenues and better street lighting. And as we stated before, pedestrians have been walking freely through all 4 of our properties without a problem, and that would continue to be the case. The potential impact this proposed sidewalk would have on all 4 of our properties is unacceptable. There currently are 6 mature, healthy trees which have been flagged for removal by your appointed engineer. This would be unacceptable not only from an aesthetic point of view and the detrimental effect this would have on the character and real estate value of all 4 of our homes, but could also have a catastrophic effect on stormwater management that would potentially impact all 4 of our houses, as well as the ones below us on Pietro Place. Please note, none of our homes have ever had a water problem. Removing 6 trees and replacing them with cement sidewalk that would add a considerable amount of impervious surface to the entire block could potentially cause our basements to flood. We have seen this happen time and again with trees being removed. The removal of trees on this particular block, given the sloping side right across the east side of Washington Avenue, coupled with the enormous amount of water we have all witnessed running down Washington and turning into Belden, will be getting worse, not better, with each storm, given what we're witnessing with climate change effects. By approving this project, you're effectively putting these 4 properties at risk of flooding. And
Go ahead, Roxanne.
can I finish?
Go ahead.
It's very short.
Go ahead.
This risk of flooding, and we want to make sure this is on record. You will also be making an existing problem on Pietro Place conceivably worse. Furthermore, and as stated in a previous letter and appearance, it is our understanding that this proposed sidewalk would be our responsibility to maintain and would carry significant liability we did not sign up for when we purchased our homes. This is a burden to which we strongly object. There are countless beautifully tree-lined streets in Dobbs Ferry, and that is what gives our village its character. It is unconscionable that this board would continue to approve the removal of healthy, mature trees without understanding the impact this would have on the value, character, and resiliency of our community. We're asking that this sidewalk project would stop and are requesting to be added to the agenda of the next Board of Trustees meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roxana. Also, for the record, I do want to acknowledge receipt of emails and letters from Roxana Klein dated October 7, 2022. Also, a letter from Jerry Cipriano dated October 7, 2022. An email from Roxana Klein dated October 10th, 2022, and an email dated October 10th, 2022 from Yair Rosenkrantz. Thank you.
Just to clarify, there were 2 separate letters that Jerry Cipriano sent, and I sent them on her behalf because she was having trouble, technical. So she asked me if I would. So there's 2 separate letters she sent.
Got it. Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Patty? First, Patty, I think on behalf of the Board of Trustees, certainly myself, I want to thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, I'm going to talk about that second. First, I'm going to ask the board.
First, let me thank you for what you've done.
I'm not good at getting thank yous.
I can
I'm
tell.
not used to it.
Thank you for everything you've done for the Ferry Festa. So it was, I thought it was a great event. I spent a lot of hours there.
I'm going to give a report on that, and I'm going to ask for indulgence here because I want to talk about 2 things. One of them is the trees and the sidewalk. The other is to give you the report. I thank everybody. We had the opportunity to go out and take a look at the sidewalk.
Who's we?
I think Mike, Rob Barron, maybe 1 or 2 other people.
In your capacity as just
as members of the Sustainability Task Force, as representatives of the Traffic Committee, and probably something else too.
Kathy Dean was also there
yeah.
from the
Tree
Consortium.
Okay,
Yeah.
and when did this happen?
A year ago,
Okay,
something like that.
Maybe November?
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, almost a year ago. So I agree with 2 things. I definitely think we need a sidewalk. No doubt in my mind, we need a sidewalk. Second thing I totally agree with is these trees should not be cut down. What I don't quite understand is the only sense of that it has to be one or the other on that side of the street. If you look at the other side of the street, there's a drop off and a hill. Widening the street that direction by 4 feet, because the right of way is actually quite large on that side. You could actually just have the road go a little bit that way, put the sidewalk right along the existing curb, so you wouldn't take any of the trees down. You'd have a sidewalk, you'd have the trees, you'd have the safe condition of the road.
We all love to save the trees, so who would be responsible for looking at that? Would that be an engineer or Laura Lee? Who would look at that?
Putting that option ADA compliant.
Sure. As ADA compliant as anything else in the village of Dobbs Ferry is. You walk down the sidewalk.
That's a lawyer answer, but that's not really the answer.
No, that's not a correct answer.
It would be, yes, it would be fully ADA compliant. It would have curb cuts and it would have the right pitch and it would be the right width.
You need to get the same survey that you're doing now for the opposite side of the street. You don't know if you own enough to widen it in that direction or not, and if that would be a viable option. First need to ascertain who owns the property.
Okay.
And then, again, another spec would need to be developed based upon the result of that survey and determination.
And an engineer or somebody would have to look at it because there is a steep slope on the other side of that ditch. I don't know exactly how wide all that is.
We would also have to figure out how much, what multiple we're willing to spend on the on this project. Widening a street into a new place is not an inexpensive proposition.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for letting us speak. Rosencrantz, 120 Belden, making reference to two things. Last week we received the copy of what was proposed as a sidewalk. It was very disheartening. I took the liberty of rereading our zoning code, and I was extremely happy to read it because in our zoning ordinances, we recognize contextual value, historical value, the character of the neighborhood, and the importance of the trees. Not only that, we have also public trees, which are trees that are in the right-of-way area that need to be protected. And we can have a zoning that says one thing, and when we have a shortcut because of money, we say, okay, that is not that important anymore. So I agree 100% with what Patty was mentioning is we need safe street. We could benefit for very good ideas on how to achieve a win-win scenario for everyone, saving the trees. 6 trees is a very high price to pay. And I truly believe that we can achieve what we want to do and have safe streets. First of all, we can have stop signs, better lighting, going across the street, widen the streets, have landscape. We discussed back in November, if I remember, the option of landscaping the sidewalks, having something more in character with what the block is. One size fits all is not a solution. Every street is not Main Street. We have streets that have the character of Westchester, and I have one more minute to make, please, let's think about this. Let's not go crazy about this. We have trees, we have character, we have values, we have the problems of water, and I believe there is more than one solution. I don't think it's...
Thank you, Yaya. Anybody else?
Yes.
Come on up.
I'm attending by video.
Okay, not yet. Go ahead.
Okay.
My name is Ann Schneider, 100 Belden Avenue. I am their neighbor right on Belden facing the golf course. And my house abuts Pietro Place, where those houses flooded last year, this year, whatever. We have enough water, so I am against taking down the trees because the trees hold water on their own up there. And so it would be damaging to my property. I might wind up with a lot of water coming down. So I'm worried about that. And Pietro Place is still not fixed by the town here to figure out what they're going to do with that water. And it's still, when you hear that it's going to be a lot of rain, they're in trouble still after over a year. So something has to be done before we would contemplate even thinking about putting in a sidewalk and taking down trees. The trees would hold the water that would protect my home.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Ben Austin. My address is 32 Magnolia Drive in Dobbs Ferry, and I'm speaking about the first resolution, which is awarding the bid for the Bel Air Drainage Project. My house on Magnolia Drive, the back of my house faces Bel Air. And in the last several years, there's been some extreme damage to our property from water coming in off of Bel Air. I have taken video, extensive video. Some of this video shows, by the way, water flowing onto our property and off of our property at a rate of more than 1,000 gallons per minute. So this is quite severe. I've shown this video and sent this video to the DPW, and I believe Mr. Trezza is at this meeting virtually. And Stephen Trezza has been to our property along with an engineer, so he's aware of the issue, and I've sent the video and the issues to him. I'm a little bit concerned because I had not seen the drawings for the bid scope of work until this evening, and it appears that the work ends at 67 Bel Air. So the part of Bel Air that's behind my house, over which the water flows into my property, is not affected by this bid, and the curbs are not being done, and the curbs need to be done. The curbs are compromising my property, as well as trees, as well as retaining walls, and you may hear more about this from Pat, who is also my neighbor. So I'm really writing to say thank you for dealing with the issue. I'm grateful that the board and Mr. Trezza and the engineers have begun to look at this issue, but I'm somewhat concerned that the solution proposed does not deal at all with the back, with 41, 45, and 67 Bel Air and the curbs over those properties, because the work seems to end at 67 Bel Air, which is the junction of Buena Vista and Bel Air. I will be sending my video and drawings to Ms. Ferraro because previously I've only sent them to the DPW and to the Department of Buildings.
Okay. Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Patrick Williams, 67 Bel Air Drive. So I came here tonight to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the board for moving forward with the Bel Air Drive water issue. And quite frankly, Ben and I are neighbors, but yet we're miles apart. I didn't see his video until tonight, and it's quite stunning. I've sent several letters that point out some problems with the drawings. I'm meeting with Ms. Ferraro on Thursday morning. Again, I was going to thank you for moving forward and looking forward to a successful vote tonight to move forward. But after seeing the video I see tonight, and still not hearing back from the engineering firm on some of the things I pointed out regarding the drawings being wrong, obvious things, I would suggest you take another 2 weeks. Do not vote on it tonight. Take the 2 weeks. Potentially invite the engineer on Thursday when I meet with Ms. Ferraro. We can go over the drawings. It's not going to cost any more money. And maybe look to vote at the next board meeting. I think it's very important. We both have flooding issues, but we're not here to waste the village's money. So I would offer that for your consideration. Thank you.
We want to get it right if we can, so thank you. Okay, I think we had someone online who has.
Sure. Is it my turn now?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You've been very patient, sorry.
No worry. It's my first time here. I was there physically last 2 weeks ago, but I couldn't wait because I have kids at home. So I have to do it on Zoom. Sorry about that. My name is Scarlett Du. His first name is Scarlett, S-C-A-R-L-E-T-T. Last name Du, D-U. I live on 50 King Street, Dobbs Ferry. I want to show you a picture here of King Street. Can you guys see?
No.
Can you guys see?
Yes.
I'm not very good at Zoom. Sorry about that. So this is King Street. You can see the curve. The other side is coming from Ashford. So this is King, go down and to Northfield. See that? So I have talked to Rob at traffic committee a couple times regarding this. As you can see, forget about the construction because construction is going to go away. But it's the blind spot there. When people park here, you can see because every morning when I drive on like this to go to Ashford, it's totally blind spot. You can see it. You can't see any car coming towards you. And if you're coming home, same thing. There's car parking on this side where the construction is. And same thing, it's blind spot. And I talked to Rob and he said he talked to the fire department and they do not want to put the how do you call it? The speed bump on the floor because, they can rush to rescue the fire. I understand that. And I asked Rob whether it's possible to put a mirror. See the mirror? You can put a mirror in the pole here. So both sides of the traffic can see, to see it. And he said, no, the mirror, I'm sorry about that. The mirror one was presented and was rejected too. So every morning I'm driving onto Ashford like this, blind spot. You can see it. The cars are all, there's a dentist office there blocking. All the employee park on both sides. I'm a blind spot driving my kids to school. It's dangerous. So that's my first concern. I want to inform the board of the hazard. And I actually talked to the traffic department. The police told me nothing has happened yet for now. So we're going to put it down that way. But that's not a healthy mentality. Just because nothing has happened. No accident has happened. So the first one. The second one is Gow Park. You guys probably all recognize this. This is Gow Park. My kids go to Gow Park nonstop during the summer. My daughter actually lifeguard here. See this spot, which is the Gow Park exit? See my cursor is? Yes. My son walked out of this. He almost got hit by a car right here. A car just, they full speed. They're just driving towards Washington, all full speed. He almost got hit right here. So I talked to Rob about that. I say, is it possible to get some crosswalk? He said we have an informal crosswalk here, this one. Actually, it's an informal one. And I say, is it possible to do another one right in front of Gow Park? He said that costs money because you need to do the handicap curve. You cannot have the curbside like that. You need to make handicap accessible. So that costs $10,000 or $20,000. But I just want to bring this to the board's attention. Gow Park is nonstop in the summer. The whole Dobbs Ferry family, everyone with kids goes there. Swimming, especially the new playground, and the Dobbs Ferry, football and baseball, everyone there. It's dangerous there. Sorry, one more. This one, Sawmill exit. This is not anything for you to revise, but I just want to inform you. See the Sawmill exit here? This white car here, this 2 parking spot here are very essential. And I told Rob in the traffic department too, do not remove this 2 parking spot. Because if you remove this 2 parking spot, all the cars going to fly out into Ashford and it's very accident prone. So this 2 car parking spot here calms the traffic off Sawmill exit. It's very important. This 2 parking spot do not be removed.
Scarlett, I'm going to have to stop you because you're at 4 minutes. You're at 4 minutes. So I would suggest that you send these pictures to us, and maybe we could have the traffic committee review them and come up with maybe some possible solutions. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I did talk to Rob about that, but I will send it to you again. Send it to
to the board of trustees, to the village administrator, and she'll forward it to the proper place, and we can look at it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Anybody else? No more. Oh, wait a second. Anybody else? Okay. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rachel Cipriano, Jerry Cipriano's daughter. I wanted to just add a few more notes about the sidewalk on Washington Avenue, if that's okay.
Sure.
I wanted to just add one other perspective. I agree with everything that everyone said thus far about the water issue. But I also might add this other, and the kind of the aesthetic of the trees and the difference it would bring to our properties. But I also wanted to kind of add a perspective about where sidewalks, in my view, and as someone who lived in Dobbs Ferry my entire life and grew up here, would be most conducive. in areas around the park to and from schools into town. Our particular block is not necessarily of that. And adding a sidewalk to that area also adds some other difficulties in terms of backing out of our parking spots in a street that has a lot of cars that move to and from long range distances as opposed to like in between those shorter streets. So something to consider as well when thinking about this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patty. Can you do this in 3 minutes, Patty?
I'll try to keep it to 3 minutes. One size does not fit all. Certainly fits Dobbs Ferry. Dobbs Ferry has a lot of different personalities, a lot of different needs. And the Ferry Festa was one that had many different ideas and thoughts, and it was an unusual year. The first thing is it was after a 2-year hiatus, which had a lot of rust on the machinery. So it took us a little bit of extra effort to make things work. We had a lot of new people involved, and we actually had a significant increase in the number of empty stores, which actually factored into a lot of the challenges. The last time we had the Ferry Festa, there were 4 empty stores. This year there were 27. So it's a issue that we need to deal with, and I think we have trustees who are aware of that, who are shaking their head, which is good. And it was drizzly, which I hold the mayor 100% responsible for, I had to say.
Turn off that mic, please.
3 minutes are up.
Look, the Cardinal himself couldn't stop the rain.
I know. And if he can't do it, then what you know, the thing that is important for people to understand is that if we had not gone ahead on October 1st, that would have meant we did not have the Ferry Festa. It wasn't an option to move it. People talked later about why we didn't have a rain date. And a rain date we don't have because it's really, really expensive to try and do that. You'd have to double book the bands, double book the inflatables, double book the stages, even the vendors. You'd have to make sure you had vendors who could do either of the weekends you'd be picking. So it just wasn't a realistic thing. And we persevered, and I thought it turned out really good. We didn't have as many as the famous 15,000 that we'd had in a couple of years, but we had a lot of people who seemed to have a really good time. And I think, you know, that's what really counts. There are a bunch of thank yous that I want to give. First to Jen Murphy, who, the only connection to this is that we're both on the Sustainability Task Force. And I told her what we were having problems with social media formats, and she jumped into it and helped get that cured very quickly. She reached out to Christy Shepard-Nell, who came running in on her White Stallion and immediately got our www.ferryfesta.com website working again. Fixed it up, put the right information on. Jessica Galen jumped in and got a Facebook page up after I was banned for life from Facebook for slamming because I was pressing the groups. So it showed up like I was sending out emails to 10,000 people. Kendra and the rec staff were great. They, as they always are, they handled the paperwork, they got the inflatables, did a lot of good work. Joe Rooney for being Mr. Enthusiasm and saying everything's going to work and always smiling and making it, you know, the main stage a really, you know, good success and bringing the bands in. Jen and Steve from the DPW and their staff for doing what is only, I mean, it's just amazing that they can clean it up in an hour, basically, and get everything back to the way it was. Chief Rick and his fabulous team, I mean, they were just so good that day. They helped out in the back because we had, you know, we didn't have a lot of people helping. It was basically myself and my son. And they showed up and everything was very orderly. I need to give a special thank you to Klitnick, who when they heard that we were going to cancel having inflatables, because we just didn't have the resources and the inflatables were so much more expensive this year, they just said, well, what do you need? And they wrote a check. So that was really great. Moms stepped up similarly and made a sponsorship for, you know, the things that we needed that we had to cover. And then we get to the thank you for the mayor and the trustees. People always ask me every year, well, what did they do? I said, well, they did the most important thing. They let us use their streets to have this. Without you guys standing behind it and allowing us to do it, it couldn't happen. So thank you tremendously for that. I want to thank the vendors, but I also want to thank all the thousands who showed up and had a drizzly fun time on a Saturday in October. So thanks to all of you for all of it, and we'll see what happens next. Thank you.
Thank you again, Patty, for everything. Okay, let's move to the resolution item. So is Anthony ready?
He is online.
Okay. Can we see him?
Should be able to see him. Is he on?
Anthony, are you there?
I am here. Good evening.
Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony. So have you heard some from the people from the courtesy of the floor about their concerns about the study?
Yeah, I did hear that. In reference to, I think it was 32 Magnolia, actually, Ms. Ferraro had sent us that video. Stephen had sent us that video. That was kind of late in the process. That was further down Bel Air, down Lower Bel Air, or down the southern end. We did add a curbing item to the contract. It was not included in the survey area, but we added a line item for additional curbing to be installed as directed by the engineer, about 350 feet of curb, because I think that was the main concern that gentleman had with the water topping the curb and ending up in his yard at 32 Magnolia. So that's in there. That was one of the things that changed in the scope. We did see a bunch of comments from, I believe, Mr. Williams. We did address and answer those. There were a couple of typos on the plan, but I don't think it was anything of substance that would really necessitate putting off the bid. I'm not sure what that would accomplish for 2 weeks, as he mentioned. I would recommend against that. You know, we can make field changes. I know we had a concern about a catch basin near the stairway. We can make a field adjustment there. But all the items are in there to do this. We had added along the way, we had added the process, during the process on this, we did add Porter Place to this as well, which wasn't in the original assumption here to do. The original scope was really just replacing the pipe on Bel Air. We added items to address Mr. Williams' issues at 67 Bel Air. You'll see on the plans it's kind of an integral curb and gutter piece along that stretch to kind of help contain the water that is a low spot, and there's a double catch basin there in the proposal. And then we did add Porter Place, about 200 feet of piping once that came to light during this process with the sinkholes on Porter Place, with curbing and asphalt items there. So, you know, but we could make field adjustments if there are concerns with any homeowners there.
Okay, Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, Anthony, a quick question. I know one of the things, and maybe this has been addressed already, but one of the things when I spoke to Mr. Williams about his concerns was had to do with the width of some pipes and whether there was actually a necessity to have that second catch basin. Have you addressed those comments of his?
Yeah, we did send some comments back. I don't know if it's made its way to Mr. Williams yet, but
It did. I forwarded it.
They have not.
Yes, I did last week.
My October 5th emails, I haven't received any response back.
Okay, Lori Lee was on it as well, so I'll go back and I'll resend it.
Okay.
But it did go out to the entire group.
Okay. Maybe we can answer them now. I mean, the
Sure.
piping's wrong, the drawings are wrong, dimensions are wrong.
Look, I'm not sure tonight's the right way to do this then. If there was, and my sense is I want to get it right rather than rush into this.
It's an expensive project, and it should be done right.
So I'd rather have this put over for 2 weeks and just get it right. So If the majority's okay with that, I think we should just put it over for 2 weeks. I don't know, how does everybody else feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine, but I did have a concern too that we can think about and talk about next time, that the lowest responsible bidder was like over $200,000 less than all other bidders. And so it seems like maybe Anthony, at the next time, you can explain, why there's such a differential, because it seems to be off. I mean, 50,000, 75,000, but over 200,000 seems significant. Are we just going to get in a position where we have these change orders and it increases the price?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have change orders. We have contingency built in there. We did an estimate and we were at about 550.
Okay.
So we weren't surprised. I did speak with Landy Construction, and he's kind of looking at this as a good winter type job to keep his guys busy, so to speak. So I don't think he built a lot of maybe as much profit in. I didn't think this was a $700,000 job.
Okay, Karen, I just wanted to have an explanation because it seems to be an odd differential, but thank you.
Isn't there, forgive me for speaking for a moment, but isn't there also an issue if the drawings do not reflect, I mean, you're saying that there's additional work that's not reflected in the drawings.
This isn't the format for this. We don't do back and forth between public and.
We're just going to put this over for 2 weeks, and then we can get this resolved. So I don't need a motion or anything like that. We're just going to put it over, right?
Just table it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll put it over for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Action item number 2 is a discussion regarding request from Hunters Run Homeowners Association to have the community-wide garage sale between 9 and 6 o'clock. Is there a motion to approve the request? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosen-Asher, all in favor? That's approved. Is there a motion to approve the audit of claims as submitted and recommended by the village treasurer? That's Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That's approved. Let's move to the liaison reports. Do you have anything, Nicole?
Yes, so the Youth Services Council is having a discussion on cannabis and youth on October 17th at the Embassy Center from 6 to 7, and they have a presenter from NYU, Langone Health. I don't know if I said that right, it might be Medical Center. And then, hold on. The rec department has their annual Halloween happenings, so they have the window painting on the 23rd from 10 to 2, the Field of Screams at Memorial on October 28th from 7 to 9 for ages 8 and up, the pet parade on the 30th at 11:30 a.m., Halloween bash with inflatables, bubble bus, food trucks, and live music from 12 to 4 on the 30th, and then the normal trick-or-treating from 4 to 6 on Cedar and Main on the 31st.
Okay, Donna?
Yeah, the senior center will be giving out the senior flu shots on Monday, Monday the 17th. They start at 9:30. You must call to make an appointment. There are also still some COVID booster shots that might be available, but that's in a limited number, so you'd have to call for that. So you call to talk to Abby at 914-907-3162.
Sherry?
Yes, the Human Rights and Diversity Committee, wants to thank the mayor and the board for allowing them to have a table at the Ferry Festa. They had a lot of good conversations with people, including our esteemed county executive, George Latimer, and looking into getting the county's insights and help into hate crime parameters and hate incidents, and hopefully doing a presentation on that. And they also think through the connection of Ferry Festa, they're hopefully connected with some future volunteers. They had a debrief with their first student intern, Verity Chow, and she really appreciated the opportunity to serve as an intern and work on the community survey project. Her contribution was very much appreciated, and she very much appreciated the opportunity. The Human Rights and Diversity Committee is continuing to work with the Dobbs Ferry Library in preparing for the Big Read panel discussion on October 26th in honor of Hispanic and Latin Heritage Month. And they are encouraging us to read the book that's highlighted, which is called Infinite Country by Patricia Engel, and free copies of the books are available at the library for everyone. And the second annual Wickers Creek Walk will take place on the Friday after Thanksgiving for Native American Heritage Day.
Good, thanks. Mike, you have anything?
Nothing for tonight.
Matt, do you have anything?
Only to say that the AHRB has been doing its work very well in what is the swan song for the current configuration.
Larry?
Not a liaison report, but just one item that both Melissa and Lori Lee have done a little bit of work on. There's been some confusion historically about the placement of election signs and where they could be placed. So I just thought if we could get that on the record, if one of the two of you could take a moment. In the school board election, there was some concern that signs were disappearing, and so they're not allowed in public right-of-ways, but maybe you could clarify, either Lori Lee or Melissa?
Sure, we had a conversation with the mayor and Melissa and myself on Tuesday. Signs placed on public property need to be approved by the village board of trustees. However, signs placed on private property can be placed as needed, especially because the code specifically says political signs do not need to go through an approval process, much like all the other signs on private property. So as long as it's placed on private property, there would be no issue with the signs. In the past, there have been signs in the right-of-way too close to the pavement, which is maybe obstructing views for travelers. And again, just a reminder, the right-of-way extends beyond the pavement. So if you're just mindful of your placing of the signs to be on private property at sufficient distance away from the pavement, that will certainly go a long way to alleviating safety concerns.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question since we're talking about that? Early voting, is it not in Dobbs Ferry now?
Yeah, so I understand that the early voting will not be in Dobbs Ferry.
That's
The early
very
voting-
important to let people know.
Yes, thank you. The early voting will, I don't know if it's official, but I think it's going to be in Hastings at their community center. I do not expect it to be in Dobbs Ferry this year.
Hopefully we can mark the building here carefully so people know where to go.
Early voting begins October 29th. In case you don't get the postcard from the Board of Elections, we should have a sign about early voting as well.
Right, excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I did speak with the Westchester County Board of Elections, and they did confirm that early voting will not be in Dobbs Ferry. It will be at the Hastings Public Library.
Library. Okay. Maybe we could put a sign downstairs that says.
Yeah, so people can show up.
We should do an e-blast.
Yeah, sign, letter, newsletter,
Yeah.
wherever we can put it, I think.
Is there a way to bring it back?
It was just not a good location.
Okay, any other news or reports? I want to thank the Our Lady of Pompeii had their 100th anniversary. It was a very moving event. I thought it was great. It was greatly attended. I want to thank for the invitation. I know Trustee Sullivan and Trustee Casal was there as well. I also want to again thank everyone who came to Ferry Festa. And there's nothing further. We'll adjourn tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight? Trustee Taylor, second Trustee Patino, all in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
Second.